All right, thanks to a long-standing request, I am actually going to answer a question that I did not think I was going to answer for a long time. I am going to tell you guys how I allocate my stocks. In other words, when I have cash, where do I put it? What stocks do I buy? Not because this is financial advice. I underline that 3 times. Please underline it in red pen if you're taking notes. That's not what this is for. It's used as a vehicle. I'm telling you this as a vehicle to talk about risk, because I think we in tech misunderstand risk for some pretty basic reasons, and it's important for our careers, regardless of the investment piece. I don't care if you have $10 to invest, or $100, or $1,000, or $1,000,000. The risk piece is relevant. So let's get what I would consider the boring stuff out of the way first. This is how I invest. I invest as a ordinary monthly investment tranche, 70% of the amount I can set aside into VU, 10% into QQQ, and the remaining in 5% increments into a couple of stocks that I think I would be willing to hold for the next 20 or 30 years. Stocks like Apple or Microsoft. And that's it. There's nothing else fancier. The whole thing is just mostly by index funds. And I say that, and not even in tech. Like, yes, I know VU is exposed to tech because the S&P 500 is exposed to tech, so I get it. But fundamentally, it is the most boring choice I can make or think about making, pretty much, for investment. And that was important to me. And it's important to me because my life is exciting in so many other ways. I have kids that are growing, I have a family, I also have a tech career that is very demanding. Full-time job, totally focused on making sure that I am able to deliver for my company, my team, make the products go that I need to go from a launch perspective. And at the end of the day, that does not leave me with a lot of spare brain power. I don't have a lot of time to research. Yes, I have been a certified tier 2 options trader. Yes, I've done day trading. Yes, I've had some wins. That is not a sustainable strategy for me. And I say that not because I think it's something nobody should do, but I do want to challenge the assumption that I've seen some people bring in tech, that you can hack your way to any kind of literacy quickly, even in a subject like finance. Finance is not particularly subject to the kind of shortcuts that have enabled software to apply so much leverage against problems, and that have given a lot of us the opportunities for careers we wouldn't have otherwise. It just isn't. At the end of the day, finance, the fundamental rules of how you create value and track value and understand currency, hasn't really changed since about the 1500s. There were speculative bubbles back in the 1600s. The South Sea bubble, you can look it up, the tulip bubble. I'm digressing. The point is, when I think about finances, I think about being boring because I think about the long term. I think about de-risking myself for the long term, and that is much more important to me than a particular short-term opportunity or missing out on a potential big upside that has a lot of risk to it, has a lot of volatility to it, and might not be here tomorrow. I would much rather be boring because my goals are too important. And so I guess I want to ask you, not what advice you would give me, but what advice you would give your future self. If you're coming to your future self in 20 or 30 years and you're trying to give them advice on where they would want to be in life, what would you say? Just take a minute. You want to think about where that person is going to be, your future self. You want to think about what they will be doing, what they will be needing, whether they will still be working. And I say that not to be morbid, but to ask you to consider where you assess your risk in your life, and to think more deliberately about the possibility that you might be overconfident. Most of the people I know take this idea of confidence and leverage that we have to have in software, and we tend to over-apply it. I've done this too. We tend to over-apply it, and we tend to think we know more than we actually do about a whole lot of other subjects. And I am really, really careful now. I've been burned a few times. I'm really, really careful not to assume I know more than I really do about finance. I would much rather be boring and perhaps miss out on the optimal stock run, but know that I made a decision that is going to stick around for the next 20 or 30 years and I can be consistent with. Because at the end of the day, it's not really a game for me. It's life. I need to get it right. So, all of that being said, my challenge to you is to ask yourself today, how am I assessing risk? How am I understanding risk? Is risk something that I feel good about measuring and assessing? Would people describe me as overconfident? Do I really understand what I'm doing when I get the money I'm so desperately looking for in tech? Because, to be honest, that money doesn't come along very often. I've had options go to zero on me. I assume equity is worth paper until proven otherwise. It is much, much more useful to think of the worst case scenario and plan for it than it is to be hopeful and plan for that and find out you were wrong. The startup might not be worth that much. Founding might not work out. Founding is a tremendous concentration of risk. I've done it. And so none of this is to discourage you. If you want to found, you're going to found. I know, believe me, I know, I've been a founder. But you need to understand that risk doesn't go away just because you believe in yourself. I love self-confidence. We need to have it. I've said that several times in this video. But we need to have just enough pessimism, just enough cynicism to recognize when we don't know things. And I think finance is a great spot for that. And that's why when I decided I would finally answer this question of, hey, Nate, what stocks do you buy? I was like, you know what? Fine. I will tell you how I allocate. And then we're going to talk about risk. Because I think there's this assumption that there's this magic ingredient in the stock market that brings wealth. And the magic ingredient is inside you, and it's consistency. That's it.